And we are back once again on Yankees Baseball Tonight to break down the R.A. Dickey trade. The reigning National League Cy Young winner officially dealt to the Blue Jays, along with Josh Thole and a prospect to be named for top young talent. And Joel, you've written about this, and you said maybe not the most popular thing for the Mets to do, but the right thing to do. Why?
You know, it's not popular probably in either city, right? Because Toronto's been building this prospect base, and people are like, how do you give up your number 1 and 2 prospect for a 38-year-old knuckleballer? And teams are where they are. Right now, Toronto is ready to win. They've been stockpiling prospects. 3 years ago, almost to the day, they traded Roy Halladay, a Cy Young winner, for a package that included Travis d'Arnaud. Right now, they've cleaned up their payroll. They've built a nice farm base. They're ready to go for it. The Mets are in that process, cleaning up their salaries, trying to build a good farm. And right now, with R.A. Dickey, where did the Mets finish in 2013? Right? They would be strengthening their strength. Their strength is the rotation. Dickey would go into that rotation. Rotation still wouldn't be better than Washington's rotation. Probably not better than Philly's rotation. Maybe as good as Atlanta, you could make an argument. But the rest of those teams are so much better than the Mets. So they finished 4th with R.A. Dickey. They finished 4th without him. The idea is to become a sustained contender. And if they hit this trade, good catching is hard to find. This guy's one of the 1 or 2 best catching prospects in the sport. Syndergaard is a well-regarded. He's going to be a top 50 in like Baseball America, Baseball Prospectus kind of prospect. So now you think of Syndergaard, you think of Wheeler, right? You think of Harvey, you think of Nice. You're starting to put together a long-term rotation that potentially can compete with Washington and other teams. It means for Met fans punting at least 2013, but better to punt and be better a different day than to keep trying to fool yourself. I think this is a trade they had to make.
Yeah, meantime, it's go time for the Blue Jays, Jack, no doubt about it. I mean, they clearly are. We view them completely differently now.
No, you should. After the trade with the Marlins, where the Marlins basically just cleaned house, you start to look at that rotation now. Johnson and Burley have been added. Dickey has been added. You put those guys in there with Romero and Morrow, that's a very formidable rotation that the Jays will be running out there. And you can't be stuck in the middle. You can't be stuck in between. That's where the Blue Jays have been in that division for so long. They look at the Yankees and the Red Sox as being teams that they can attack this year, and they are going for it. And if it meant they had to pay that price, and that's a pretty heavy price, they decided to pay it for Dickey.
And I think for the New York Mets, one of the most difficult things for any organization is to look in the mirror and say, okay, where are we really? Are we in a position where we can contend? And it goes to your point, Joe, where they said, we've got to be all in. And we're going to trade our biggest chip, which right now is R.A. Dickey, to go get some good, solid, young prospects in d'Arnaud and Syndergaard. And I think building up that base for the Mets as they look a year or two now, then they'll be able to compete. But it's a tough call to make that trade right there.
I agree, but they've been trying to play the middle now for a while, and the middle is incompetence. The middle is not good enough. You've got to you're all in one way or the other. You're all in like Toronto, and you're going for it, or you're all in and rebuilding. The worst thing to be is a 43-win NBA team, where maybe you get the 8th seed, you don't get a good enough draft pick, you get knocked out in the first round of the playoffs. The Mets have not been good enough. You've got to make a decision about getting good enough, quick enough. And keep in mind, after this season, Johan Santana and Jason Bay's contract comes off. They'll get another year of growth, hopefully for them, right? From Harvey, Wheeler, Syndergaard, d'Arnaud, some of their other prospects, and have $40 to $60 million to spend in next year's free agent market to maybe speed it up if these prospects are good enough.
And on the other side of that trade, you look at Toronto. I think that Alex Anthopoulos is looking at the American League East and thinking, now's the time. There's some weaknesses. We've seen a lot of movement in the AL East, and this might be their time. So that's why he's all in. He's got those good chips, those young players. He's throwing out there on the table and saying, let's see what we can do.
And we've seen some of the notable acquisitions. We've mentioned some of them. You've got Reyes, you got Melky Cabrera. I was on the fence with this trade. I didn't think the Mets should trade Dickey unless they got overwhelmed. Well, the prospects that they got, from a baseball perspective, you have to say it was a very good trade. But I also think what they've told their fans is, we've taken away one less reason for you to come to the ballpark. And it's very easy for us to sit here as people who work in the industry and say, they're going to have to wait. It's going to be a couple of years before the Mets challenge again. Well, what about the guy who wants to lay out some money for a ticket? And every 5 days you could at least see R.A. Dickey. Every year there's a Baltimore Orioles, somebody who sneaks up and plays above their head. The Mets aren't going to be that team because they took a 20-game winner and got rid of him.
You know, Jack, I actually see this side of the argument, and I thought about it long and hard when I began to write about it. And then I said, You got to get the fans to come more than the 15 starts that R.A. Dickey will make at Citi Field this year. You got to get them to come 80. And the only way to get them to come to all 80 home games is to be a good baseball team. And they were not going to be a good baseball team this year with R.A. Dickey in a tough division. And I'll say one thing about Toronto. On paper, they're much better. But let's start playing who's been the champions of the offseason. 2 off-seasons ago, Carl Crawford, Adrian Gonzalez, Boston was the champions. Didn't make the playoffs, sell off by last July. Last offseason, Miami was the champions of the offseason. They were doing sell-off by July. Dodgers and Angels, they were big buyers last offseason. Neither made the playoffs. This brings a whole nother level of pressure, stress, and expectations to teams that are not used to having it. Whatever you say about the Yankees know what the mandate is here. You better make the playoffs and play for a championship, and I think they've done that, 17 out of 18 years? And they know the pressure going in. I think Toronto as an organization is about to be hit with a gigantic pressure. It's good to have the pressure. It means you have a lot of good players, but let's see how they handle it.